Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello my friends, we are from group 3 and today we will discuss about the novel entitled Pride and Prejudice from Jane Austen. Before we start our discussion, we will introduce ourselves first. My name is Tias Nurlaili Handayani, number 35, and my friends.
My name is Fatima Azahra, NIM 13.
And me, Rizda Putri Setiawati, NIM 19.
And my name is Ovedia Mustika, NIM 28.
Okay, the first part will be delivered by Sophia Dian.
Okay, so far I have read 3 chapters in this novel. Broadly speaking, the first 3 chapters tell about the Mrs. Bennet who has the character when his wishes are not fulfilled. He will feel restless and then his goal in life is to marry off his daughter to people who are considered rich. She also told her son to come to the dance in order to find a man who met Miss Bennet. She also wants to be able to see one of my daughters living in happily in Netherlands and my four. So far, I have read 3 chapters in this novel. Broadly speaking, the first 3 chapters tell us about Mrs. Bennet who has the character when his wishes are not fulfilled, she will feel restless. And then her goals in life is to marry off his daughter to people who are considered rich. She also told her to come to the dance in order to find a man who meets Mrs. Ben's criteria. Then she also wants to be able to see of my daughter living happily in Netherlands and of my 4 other daughters married to an equal good young man.
Okay, here I got the novel reading section starting on page 135 and I have read up to page 150. In the passage that I have read, I can conclude that it contains misunderstandings and has a bad assumptions of Mr. Darcy and Miss Bingley tried to explain to Eliza. Besides that, there was also a debate about Mr. Wickham and Mr. Bingley. In the reading, there is also Mr. Colin that denigrates Ellie with his statement saying that he is more suited to education and studies to decide what is right than women like Ellie. In addition, Elizabeth was also feel hurt of the 2 sisters Bingley and Mr. Darcy makes her of Elizabeth's family. Elizabeth also annoyed by Mr. Colin, but starting on page 149, Mr. Colin convinced Elizabeth because he wants to marry her.
Okay, so I got the part to read the novel Pride and Prejudice from pages 270 until 404. Now, I have finished reading it and I will try to briefly tell you the contents of the novel from that page. So, Mr. Darcy had proposed to Elizabeth, but Elizabeth refused because she had bad prejudice about Mr. Darcy. He thinks Mr. Darcy is a proud man. Prejudice about Mr. Darcy was getting stronger thanks to the presence of Mr. Wickham, who is a close relative of Mr. Darcy. Until one day, Elizabeth got two letters from Mr. Darcy, which contains a true explanation of Mr. Wickham and explained that Mr. Darcy was the one who proved Mr. Bingley and Jane's marriage. After receiving a letter from Mr. Darcy, Elizabeth's feelings are getting worse and she realized that Mr. Darcy is a very nice person. After a few days of feeling restless in her heart, Elizabeth decided to go with her aunt and uncle to Pemberley. Unexpectedly, Elizabeth met Mr. Darcy, where even Mr. Darcy also introduced his sister to Elizabeth. Elizabeth also realized that Mr. Darcy did like her, and Elizabeth realized that she was also attached to Mr. Darcy. But unfortunately, Elizabeth could not longer in Pemberley because she received a letter from her sister Jane.
So now Annie, I have finished reading this novel myself. I happened to get the part from page 4005 till the end. So in this section tells about Wickham and Lydia who did something very detrimental to the dignity of Mr. Bennet family. That's Lydia and Wickham running away to get married. With the help of his uncle, Mr. Gardiner, Lydia and Wickham can be found. At the time, Mr. Bennet or Mrs. Bennet was devastated by this incident. Elizabeth and Jane also feel sorry for the fate of their sister because Wickham is a man who has bad morals. He has a lot of debt everywhere. Of course, this makes Mr. Bennet family is very embarrassed because of her son who ran away with a man like that and is not married. When Von Lydia and Wickham was not married, at least it was a relief for Mr. Bennet and also his two older sisters. Finally, they were both brought back to be married and witnessed by Mr. Bennet family. Here, Elizabeth, who in Chile had Mr. Darcy, finally opened up a little to love Mr. Darcy. In fact, Elizabeth was sure that Mr. Darcy is a nice person. After Lydia and Wickham problem was over in this section, I read Jane and Mr. Bingley, who has Shelley proud of each other to express their feelings. Finally, after Mr. Bingley often visited Mr. Bennet and accompanied by Mr. Darcy, Mr. Bingley ventured to say that he liked Jane. Here, Elizabeth often sees Mr. Darcy long to speak to him, but he realized that his family really disliked Mr. Darcy. But over time, Elizabeth always received orders from Mrs. Bennet to accompany Mr. Darcy wandered around town so as not to disturb Mr. Bingley and Jane's together. It was from here that Elizabeth expressed her admiration for Mr. Darcy for what he did to his sister Lydia. Then, after this long meeting, Elizabeth said her feeling for Mr. Darcy's family. The family who instantly did not like Mr. Darcy now they believe that he can make Elizabeth happy. It's all because of Elizabeth who convinced her family. I think it's from me.
Okay, thank you guys. And I think that's all from us. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Maybe we the next can discuss about what issue yang akan kita bahas, ya nggak?
Ya, betul.
Oke. Jadi nanti maybe every person can conclude what issue yang akan kita bawakan nanti buat selanjutnya. Oke?
Oke.
Oke.
Bye.
Bye guys.